Hello and welcome to the National Debt Discussions, Part 1. This is a topic that I think about a lot, and it's very multidimensional. There are a lot of different angles to go about this. There are a lot of factors to consider here. So nothing that I can, cover just in one video here. But today I'd like to at least start this discussion just on one of the metrics. And that metric today is just to think about the nation as if it were a company. And how much revenue does it make? How much debt does it have? And how does that level of debt relate to that amount of revenue? And what does that mean? How does that compare to other companies if you were to consider the US government as a company? So let's start here with the total US revenue. So the main source of revenue here is going to be taxes. That's how the United States and most governments receive income or source of revenue. And let's break down the main sources of revenue for the United States. First, you've got individual income taxes. That's about 49% of the total. So taxes withheld from your paychecks, capital gains, and so forth. Then you've got payroll taxes. That's 35%. So those are things related to Social Security, Medicare, and the likes. Then you've got corporate income taxes. That's 9%. That seems kind of low when you look at that number compared to the personal individual taxes, but moving along, so that's business profits, that's corporations being taxed for their profits. The next one, excise taxes, that's 3% of the total revenue. So that's taxes on bad things like gasoline, alcohol, tobacco, that sort of stuff. And then rounding out the other categories, all of these are around 1 or 2% or less than 1%. You've got customs duties from imports. You've got estate and gift taxes, that's less than 1%. And then you've got other miscellaneous interest, fines, and fees, which are about 2 to 3% of total revenue. Okay, so the total there is 4.9 trillion. That's as of 2024. That's 4.9 trillion. That's how much revenue the corporation of the United States brings in annually. Now let's compare that to the national debt. And the total national debt is 38 trillion and rising. And so we will get into the sources of debt. That's a whole other topic that I can talk about. Spoiler alert, the really surprising one is just the interest payments on the debt itself. That's a whole nother discussion. But let's just look at that. $38 trillion in debt versus $4.9 trillion of revenue. If you divide that 38 trillion by the 4.9, the ratio that you get there is 7.75x. So that means that the amount of debt is 7.75 times the amount of revenue. Needless to say, that's a lot. And so how do you compare that to a normal company? Well, I think that a small enterprise, you would say a moderate, kind of manageable amount of leverage being that ratio that we just calculated there, would be 0.5 to 1, would be sort of a moderate level of leverage. And a lot of companies have this, even up to, if you look at the debt to revenue ratio of 1 to 2, that's still a hefty amount, you could say, but lots of large companies still operate at 1 to 2 or even 3x debt versus revenue. So ideally, you don't want to have 1, 2, or 3x debt to revenue, but you can still make it happen with the right type of stable business that has good growth prospects. Okay, then you've got 3 to 4x, and that's when you start labeling businesses as highly leveraged. This is where you might say that large financial institutions might start to label these types of companies as not necessarily investment grade. These would be risky, these would be speculative. This basically means that the company is pretty much headed for insolvency, but it might have some innovation that it made that might all of a sudden boost its revenue and give it a lot of growth prospects. It might be experiencing growing pains, but there might be promise there, so there might be some investors out there who are still willing to sort of risk their money because maybe they see something that this company has that might allow it to really strike it big. Okay, but that's 3 to 4x. The United States is at 7.75x. So the question you asked there is, if the United States were a business like any other business, would it be operationally sound? And the answer, of course, is no, not even close. So the more that we operate at this type of level, with these levels of spending and debt, there's just absolutely no way that this company remains solvent. It's a crash course. It's headed for disaster. So obviously the United States is not a company. It's a bit different because it's a government and it prints its own money and so forth. Again, a whole nother topic, whole other discussions can be had about that. But I just wanted to sort of give you that frame of reference there, that if you were to treat the U.S. government as if it were a functioning business, it's nowhere close to being insolvent, and nowhere close to being solvent. And at that level of debt, the interest and so forth, and along with the principal that you have to pay on it, just becomes overwhelming, and businesses with that type of leverage always go under. And the United States is not immune to that, despite being the largest government in the world. There are still structural problems with the debt, namely the interest, and it's going to have a heck of a time digging itself out of that. It's hard to see how that trend could possibly be reversed without some drastic measures, but again, we can talk about that in other videos. There are so many side discussions to be had about this. It's a very large topic, and again, something dear to my heart. Is something that I think about almost every day. It's pretty worrisome, but that's that for today. Part 1 of the national debt. Is it a solvent company? No, it is not.